Hey guys, it's Keith. I want to talk about these recent deaths in the States. I've been away for a bit. I'm in Berlin, back in my old home, and I've been trying to regulate my media diet, be a little less terminally online, scroll Reddit a little less frequently, and and yet this story has been kind of just festering in my brain a bit. And it came out late. I didn't catch this right away because apparently there was a bit of a hush job happening in general media, and it was only this right-wing news sources that were covering this, as if you have to be conservative or Republican or alt-right or something to care about a young girl being slaughtered in cold blood on a public city bus in the Carolinas. This sucks, you know? I mean, it's just the hypocrisy really bothers me. During BLM, this was front and center news on the New York Times front page every day forever, you know, for years. George Floyd and uh, all these other victims that some of them genuinely were sad victims of police brutality. Others were a bit trumped up as martyrs or heroes, kind of undeservedly. And here we have a pretty cut and dry case of a criminal who has been in jail 14 times and been released, who just outright slaughters this girl. And I think it's just really terrible. This is the kind of thing that, you know, the USA has this reputation of being dangerous, right? Travelers from around the world wonder, oh, is it safe to visit LA? Even during those riots, when Trump sent in the National Guard, people were thinking, oh, I have a flight next week to LA. Should I even bother coming? And some people online were literally like, no, it's not safe here. They're rounding up anybody that's darker skinned, which is absurd. That definitely was not happening. So here we have an actual situation where this very innocent person was killed in cold blood, and the video is horrific. I won't show it here. But here she is minding her own business, and you can see the still frame of the surveillance footage from the bus of her getting stabbed. And I think that this needs to be framed in terms of public health and law and order. These are topics that I care about, and I'm going to keep talking about them and framing things in those policy arenas, because I think that's what we need to be caring about as citizens. I don't want to make this a race thing. The killer did make this a race thing. Got that white girl, he's quoted as saying, on this bus of minorities. This is probably, well, I'm not very familiar with the South, but there is a sizable black population throughout the South. I'm not sure how segregated that is by neighborhood, but if this is all black people and refugees, I'm not sure about the quality of this neighborhood. I don't want to speak to anything in particular, but she is in a place that a tourist probably wouldn't be. That's my guess. But nonetheless, she's like minding her own business. She's feeling safe. And of course, she's probably doing this all the time. These other workers are just minding their own business on their phones too. And then this one unhinged guy kills her just like that. And I just think it's like super sad. And I just don't know why people would want to downplay this or make excuses, as I'm seeing. There's no excuse for this. And I don't think we have to worry so much about putting people in jail. Some people should be in jail. Like, why is that a controversial take? Why is that a conservative point of view? Like, some people have forfeited their right to free movement and association within a society. This is what a society is. We all need to know that we're safe on a bus. So it's just terrible that this has happened to this girl. And I will even add, if I may, that I think part of it is sad because of how cute this girl is. Like, I would have a crush on this girl. She looks like an ex of mine. And I'm just going to say that because I don't think that many people would, you know, admit such a thing. But I do want to recognize that Obviously I'm biased a bit to even cover this story as an American when, of course, so many Ukrainians are losing their lives in Ukraine in their war against Russia. And I'm not covering that specifically, right? But this story, it's close to home. And if you're making a movie to appeal to me as an audience member and you cast this girl as the victim, that makes me even more, attentive and endeared to the story. So that's just life. And I don't feel that way about Charlie Kirk. I don't care about Charlie Kirk. I've never been like a Charlie Kirk fan. I don't really even know his shtick, right? Like, I don't really know what he does. I almost thought he was a politician, but he's not. He's just a commentator saying stuff, in public on university campuses. I guess maybe he had a podcast or a platform somewhere. I don't follow that kind of stuff. So, I don't know if he's like adjacent with Ben Shapiro on that network or what. But all to say, like, I've been aware of the name Charlie Kirk, but I've never really bothered to like listen to him. And yet I think it's terrible that he was killed. I think that people dying is bad. And that when people celebrate people dying, I'm like a little confounded. Like, why would you celebrate that? This is a father of 4 young kids. He was young. He was 31 years old. This is a tragedy. Young people dying is a tragedy. I'll admit that I cheered for a death, a political death, the Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. When he died, I was kind of like happy. I think I made a Facebook post like maybe good riddance or maybe a list of things that he's done in his lifetime. Now, this was an old man who died of natural causes. This was not a tragedy. This is a man that had an enormous effect, a legacy. His family was surely prepared. The state, the country was surely prepared to replace him. This was not this kind of tragedy that these sort of murders are. So I felt in a Christopher Hitchens kind of spirit that it was okay to speak ill of the dead, because I think in that kind of case, it's more of a time of an obituary or, in memoriam going through his life. And I can respect that people don't like certain people like Charlie Kirk. That makes sense to me. But to like actually cheer for it, that's how we get here, right? I think that's how we normalize these sort of shootings. And I find it just really interesting to now be learning more about the kind of person the murderer was. So we'll get to that. I'm just going through my Reddit upvotes here from the past week. Charlie Kirk is quoted as saying here, when people stop talking, really bad stuff starts. When marriages stop talking, divorce happens. When civilizations stop talking, civil war ensues. It's not the most eloquently worded. It was probably spoken extemporaneously, as I'm doing now. But it's a valid point, and that's why I'm here on camera speaking into this microphone. I think it's really important to talk, and I'm not sure what else you, dear viewer, consume media-wise, but if it's TikTok leftists who are gleefully celebrating this kind of thing, I think that's really pathetic. I think that's bad. And it's not that I think that being on the left is bad. I still identify as on the left, if just barely center left. I still champion progressive causes, like high tax rates and social security measures and public health measures. So these are the things that I care about, and those are leftist causes, as has free speech been my whole life, and I still care about that a lot. And he was an example of that. So I think it's important to just keep this in mind, that like talking should be encouraged. It should not be silenced. It should not be whether or not it's allowed should not even enter the picture. Like, it should be fostered deeply and with immense care and concern, that we need to hear what other people think. So here's Elon tweeting the AP news article, disparity between George Floyd and Irina Zarutska. Yeah, I mean, I think it's sad that the media of course, it's chasing clicks. It's all about what sells. And maybe a white girl getting killed by a black criminal doesn't sell. I think it's more about narrative. I think it's bad for a certain narrative. And it does make me think a little conspiratorially, as is the case with the very current news of today about the killer of the the assassin of Charlie Kirk, and how he's dated a trans girl, that his boyfriend was trans, that he was probably closeted and, super repressed in a conservative family, but himself holding liberal views. And I'll get to that. Actually, I guess I'll just zoom up to it. This is again Red Scare Pod quoting this roommate conversation that's come out. And he's engraving these bullets with stupid things, trans activist comments, calling people gay. I think he was very troubled in terms of his own sexuality. He definitely needed help. There's a lot of blame to go around. Parents, I think, do deserve some of that, the certain culture that he was raised in Utah. But it was certainly not Trump. It was certainly not the right. It was the left. It was the kind of echo chambers and encouragements of killing people, hurting people. I mean, punching a Nazi, I remember when even that was beyond the pale, in my opinion, when I was covering that on my podcast. It's not cool to commit harm on people. And this is the same group of people that talk about how violent words are violence. Like, that's insane to think that words are violence, but actually actual murder is good. That's insane. Okay, here's what I was looking for. So here we're on Political Compass memes on Reddit, and this is a subreddit that celebrates a lot of diverse ideas because it's people from all sorts of the political spectrum, or quadrant rather in this case. And yeah, I'm recording this on the day that the shooter's text messages are coming out about him basically confessing. And the first comment is, I got banned from our news for attempting to post the same CNN article. Permanently banned for sharing CNN from the news sub. Let that sink in. This is the kind of censorship, or rather controlling of a narrative, that I'm trying to speak to here in terms of this media study. Reddit as a platform is controlled by moderators of specific subreddits. So news is obviously a very large, not obviously, but it's called news, right? It's a very large subreddit. I'll show it to you. And this is moderated by certain people. And I'll sort by the biggest ones of today. Denying visas who celebrate. Okay, so this is a liberal bias, right? This is covering the Marco Rubio decision to cancel certain critics of Charlie Kirk who are celebrating his death. There are people getting fired over this. It's a big public freakout moment. And I don't think that's good either. I'm a free speech guy. I don't think cancel culture is cool. I've felt victim to it a lot throughout my life, not just professionally, but like socially. It's awkward to have political disagreements, but I think we should aim to make it less awkward. We should normalize having different opinions. We have different opinions about what we want to eat, like it's understandable that we don't all necessarily know or agree on how to deal with homelessness or how to handle gun violence. Like, these are tricky topics. If you want to ban all guns, I don't want to kill you over it. I want to maybe try and talk to you about why you feel that way, and maybe to look at the logistics of it and how many guns are out there in the States, and how that 99% of gun owners are safe and responsible, and that this less than 1% of gun owners are probably disturbed in some way, and maybe that's the real issue. So yeah, I'm not seeing any news about the actual shooter because I think the left has been trying to distance itself from the shooter's politics. But I think that we have to face the fact that this is just a big L for the left. This guy was a leftist. He had, he was standing up for his girlfriend. So this one here, standard error behavior, back to the censorship issue. Um, he did it for love. This commenter says, not sure why the tabloids aren't there when we need them. I think people are grasping for the most obvious answer because the idea of loving a trans person disgusts us. I'm not sure about that. It has nothing to do with fascism or with rhetoric. Imagine the person you loved was spoken of so illy by someone like Kirk. Imagine glory was just a trigger away and that you could get away with it. Um, this is just a funny take. It's neither here nor there, I guess. But I think it's good to look at who this guy was, what his motivations were. And I think that the radical left has some reckoning to do. I think that. Um, let's listen to this guy.
It, I went to school with this Tyler Robinson kid. I'll show y'all. That's him right there, Tyler Robinson. And best way I can describe him is.
Let me try this again because I think my audio is off.
I went to school with this Tyler Robinson kid. I'll show y'all. That's him right there, Tyler Robinson. And the best way I could describe him is just like a Reddit kid. All I'm gonna say is this is the kind of shit that happens when you spend way too much time online and all of a sudden your beliefs are all the way this way or all the way this way, and you do some dramatic shit to please these people that are not your friends. This internet shit is seriously no joke.
So,
I went to school with this.
point well taken. Reddit kid. This is what I'm trying to avoid. But yeah, I think it's valuable for me to be online and see what people are saying. This is a suicide note that's unrelated, but there's some crazy stuff out there, as we all know. And I think that a lot of people, we do get overwhelmed by that. And I can understand that feeling of overwhelm. I have ADHD. I struggle with anxiety, and I don't do a lot with my time productively because I get overwhelmed. I think in the case of the world, it's so important to just break things down into understandable bits. And I think that understanding narratives helps with that. Of course, we can all kind of see the Fox News from the right pushing certain agendas and the MSNBCs and CNNs on the left pushing other agendas. Maybe we don't see that one as much, right? I think most of my friends just think of New York Times and CNN as totally impartial, especially like AP, right? But like even the Associated Press or Reuters, those are being edited and vetted for what stories are covered. Their writing style is the most objective you can get. There's less editorializing, but it matters what kind of news we're taking in. And, for me, the fact that Kirk shooting suspect held leftist ideology is worth noting. For our news, it's not worth noting that because it's inconvenience. And I think this is the problem with so many outlets, is that if something is inconvenient for the narrative that most of its subscribers hold, then it will be ignored. And I think when I get in trouble with friends and acquaintances, it's when I bring these kind of topics up that they are trying to ignore because I'm maybe speaking what shouldn't be spoken in certain circles. Like we just don't talk about that because it's inconvenient for ideology, this sort of thing. And I worry about myself and all of us holding ideologies that hold us back, right? That we're trying to sanitize and protect ourselves from truth because that truth might hurt us. And I think that's bad. I just think it's really important to face the truth and to build a worldview based off of that versus the other way around, versus holding a worldview and then editing the truth to fit your worldview. And I think most of us do the second thing. That's what Socrates' or rather Plato's allegory of the cave is all about. That we're just looking at shadows on the wall, and that in time we might actually walk out of the cave and realize that the light we saw was a mere fire, and that the images we saw were mere shadows versus the actual truth of the sun outside the cave. I'll let this stupid food image play as I read this other part. It's not symmetrical. It's not both sides. YouGov polled Americans on political violence after the Charlie Kirk shooting. Only about half of very liberal Americans stand up against violence. They say it's not justified. 45% of very liberal people think that that violence can be justified. Let me say this again. 45% of very liberal people polled by yougov.org can justify political violence. Only 12% of very conservative people justify political violence. So, yeah, while we're watching this chef pour food stupidly onto the table, just to click into this, there's plenty of disagreement to be had here. But I think, whenever someone is trying to obfuscate this and point somewhere else, it's interesting to just note, like, just think about it. Just think about who you talk to and what you see. Do you think it's okay to kill rich people? Did you celebrate it when that other CEO of a healthcare whatever was shot by the much more charismatic killer, Luigi? That guy was super celebrated because he was cool looking, right? And he stood up for a certain kind of value or ideology that I can even get behind, right? I think also that HMOs and the healthcare system is a total mess and a racket and terrible and needs massive reform. I agree. I don't think it's cool to shoot somebody in the back because they are in that business. And it's sad that nothing is even happening with that, right? Like, that guy did this act, then he'll probably spend the rest of his life in jail for it. And we're not even talking about it anymore. We're not talking about healthcare. It always comes back to like gun control, which I think is like such an unproductive way to frame things. Here's a random tweet. Tyler Robinson's Fur Affinity account has been dug up on a certain drama forum, and he followed an artist notorious for drawing gay, furry, pedo art on there. Like, my analysis is that Tyler Robinson, the killer of Charlie Kirk, was a very disturbed and confused kid who was afraid to come out to his parents. He wanted to impress his dad. He wanted to be normal, but he was troubled in the sense that he couldn't square his own sexuality with the rest of the world. And given that he was dating a trans person and was trying to impress that person, I think it's very relevant that among trans people who are often radically left, there is a normalization for violence and hatred. And I find it like despicable. I find it really despicable that people that proclaim to care about humanity and dignity and respect for others, who demand this kind of respect, militantly demand it even, like in a totalitarian sense, they don't actually hold it for other people at all. At all. If you slightly disagree with the trans discussion on biology, you are dehumanized and called names, right? Like Nazi or just an asshole or something. Heaven forbid that you might think through a difficult topic slightly differently than other people. And I'm tired of doing that. And I think I've censored myself a lot throughout my life, that I feel really bad about it, that I haven't fully expressed my points of view on Instagram. I haven't even advertised this channel at all. I don't share this or email this to anybody because who am I to say, right? Like, I'm very humble about these things. I'm not trying to get in people's faces and tell them what to think, but I do think it's important to think. And I worry that people are thinking that people go down these rabbit holes that are a little dangerous. And I just wish we could recognize certain shared beliefs that human life might be sacred. That is actually not held worldwide. It's actually a rare thought. It's a new thought. Human life has been kind of treated like all life, which is to say, with disregard for most of human history. To think of human life as sacred is kind of a new, deeply spiritual way of thinking about the world. And I just think it's funny. Like, if you're going to say that, and I'm not even one that says that, I'm kind of a no lives matter kind of guy in general, but I'm not so cynical and jaded at this point that I want to disregard all news of death. I think that is a sign of terrible maladjustment to reality. I think it's important and valid and valuable to feel disturbed and hurt when people die unnecessarily. So that's how I feel. I'm sad for this Ukraine girl. Charlie Kirk at least was a public figure. He was putting himself out there. In no way do I think either of these people deserved it. The last thing I want to do is victim blame. But if I was a parent, I would probably be talking to Charlie like, aren't you putting yourself at risk by being so pronounced on these topics? Sometimes I also wonder this about myself. Like, I'm putting myself out there. Like, this is making me feel vulnerable. But this is why we need law and order. Like, people should be allowed to speak. We have to protect free speech. That's what that's about. That doesn't mean that you're, you know, protected from consequences like getting fired. That's happening. But we have to be allowed to say things and not worry about getting killed over it. That is like so primitive that I hope we could get beyond that. And we have to be able to get on a bus and not worry about getting killed. Now, again, if I was a parent, I'd probably say, hey, Irina, make sure to look around and don't put yourself in any imminent danger, not to be suspicious of everybody, but just to keep your wits about you. And, that is what I like comes to mind in my paternal instinct, my father figure instinct. If this was my girlfriend or my daughter or my friend or my mom, like I would think, okay, just be aware of where your body is in space. Like I always choose to like lean against something or sit in a corner to look outward in a power position. That's how I kind of put myself in space. But yeah, we shouldn't have to do that, right? I mean, there should be social etiquette that protects us. So it's so sad to see this image and think like, it's just like, why was this guy out of prison? And that comes back to the policy thing. Like, we have policies, certainly in Los Angeles where I live and elsewhere, that protect criminals. We have this bail system that is aiming for a sort of justice, but it creates very dangerous incentives and situations where we have dangerous people walking around free. We shouldn't have that. Dangerous people should be locked up. That's the point of prison. That is the point. And to like speak of prison reform in a way that we shouldn't have any, all because maybe some of them are corrupted or the wardens are corrupted or violent, or the kind of guards that it attracts, or the system of capitalism and privatization of security prisons. And yeah, okay, a lot of that is bad, but sadistic psychopaths wandering the streets is worse. If you think about it, I think you might appreciate what I'm saying here. All right, guys, I'll leave it there. Hopefully we don't have much more of this, but we all know that inevitably we will. It's all just about, my goal here is to take the temperature down. I think that we need to not be as radicalized. We have to be a little more compassionate toward people that disagree with us. That's my main point. And I think that's part and parcel of working on mental health. Mental health is a political policy topic, but it's also an individual personal topic. And I think we all need to mind our own health and think about how we express our frustrations and our angers at the world, who we're mad at and why. And if we're making boogeymen of our enemies and practicing witchcraft on them, using voodoo doll magic or something, like, this is not healthy. This is not a good way to be thinking or behaving. So I think we should just check ourselves and make sure that even within our own families, if somebody just thinks a little differently, it's okay. It's actually fine if people think a little differently. That's the kind of the beauty of the world, isn't it? Isn't that what celebrating diversity is supposed to be about? I think so. All right, guys. Until next time. Ciao.